We're already halfway through F1's shortest pre-season in recent memory, and that means the teams have just 3 more days on track before the cars are packed up for the Australian Grand Prix. The truncated schedule meant every team got down to work impressively quickly in the first test, so even after 3 days of running there are many clues emerging already about what to expect in 2020. If you think that analysing testing is a waste of time because it can't tell you anything meaningful, then the best team in F1 for the last 6 years disagrees with you. At the end of the first test, Mercedes offered a fascinating insight into how teams crunch the numbers to create a clear picture of the competitive order, even at this stage of pre-season. The team explained that over the course of the test, information on tyre performance, fuel loads and even power levels based on GPS data allows it to get a very good read on how things will look at the Australian Grand Prix. Mercedes set the pace comfortably during the first week, but its early predictions are for a close battle at the front, the midfield teams making up some ground on the leaders, and a considerable swing in the order of the chasing pack, but more on that later. Firstly, we'll pick up on a little nugget it buried at the end of its explanation. Ferrari made no secret of changing its approach to testing this year after its quest for outright performance in 2019 created a false picture that fooled the whole pit lane, including the prancing horse. That meant there was little alarm initially when the team didn't show at the sharp end of the order last week, but as the days went on, Ferrari's test looked less like sandbagging and more like it might actually have some problems. Team boss Mattia Binotto then declared Ferrari is behind Mercedes and Red Bull, saying things look more difficult than they did 12 months ago. But is this just Ferrari trying to prevent a repeat of last year's raised expectations? At the end of Mercedes' fascinating explanation of how to analyse testing, it dropped in this subtle question: why have Ferrari spent this test running their engines at much lower power levels than their partner teams? The long run data suggests Ferrari isn't too far behind Mercedes, but there's every chance that will only make it the 3rd quickest car. Even when teams aren't troubling the sharp end of the timesheets, viewing the cars from Trackside can tell you a lot. Gary Anderson, Mark Hughes and Ed Straw all went Trackside during the first test for us, and after 3 days of running, one car stood out: the Red Bull RB16. The braking, direction change and acceleration of turns 1, 2 and 3 at Barcelona can tell you a lot about a car, and the Red Bull looked absolutely planted. Drivers Max Verstappen and Alex Albon could get the car to do whatever they wanted through here. The Red Bull was stunning through the quick turn 9 right-hander, and while its front end was giving up a little bit in the slower final sector, where Verstappen had a couple of spins, it rides the curbs of the final chicane better than anything else on track. McLaren's quiet start to testing last year prompted suggestions it was still struggling after a tough 2018. But after the way it kicked on to win the midfield battle last season, its low-key start this time around doesn't raise the same concerns. Carlos Sainz Jr. described the MCL 35's current spec as basic, so expect to see a lot of developments arriving between now and the first race. A new front wing appeared on the final day of the first test, and team boss Andreas Seidel called this McLaren's best start to pre-season for many years. McLaren's position as best of the rest will be under threat this year, with Renault overhauling its car concept to recover from the blip of 2019, AlphaTauri aiming high as it strengthens its ties with Red Bull, and Racing Point investing heavily for the final year of these regulations. Talking of Racing Point, the Racing Point RP20 had barely made it to the end of the pit lane on the first morning before it was dubbed the Pink Mercedes. There are obvious visual similarities, and Racing Point has not hidden the fact that it has tried to copy the design of last year's championship winning car. The team's logic makes sense. It already takes a lot of its key internals from Mercedes, so why should it try to come up with a different design to fit them into? But this has been a huge job for Racing Point, one that the team has never previously had the resources to carry out. And making your car look a bit, or even a lot like the world champions is no guarantee of success. Racing Point has to quickly learn how to get the most out of a Mercedes-style design, which includes doing away with the high rake trend that most other cars on the grid feature. The clues from Test 1 suggest it has made a good start. One Mercedes innovation that doesn't feature on the Racing Point is its new for 2020 dual-axis steering, which turned heads when footage emerged of Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas moving the W11 steering wheel backwards and forwards on the straights. The system adjusts the toe angle of the front wheels around the lap, potentially reducing drag and tyre wear on the straights. Mercedes is confident the design is legal, while some rival teams wonder if this kind of setup adjustment will breach Parc Fermé rules on a race weekend. Even if it survives this season, it appears unlikely to be an innovation that remains into 2021. Next year's rulebook already features an additional paragraph relating to steering that seems to outlaw such a device. Mercedes says the FIA was aware ahead of time that it was developing this for this year, so perhaps that's why the 2021 rules have been adjusted. Valtteri Bottas's 2019 Spanish Grand Prix pole position time just about survived the first week of testing, but it's going to be shattered in week 2. That kind of performance step at the end of a regulation cycle shows just how relentless F1 teams are at finding more time in their designs. And with 2021's massive overhaul set to slow the cars significantly, this year we should see lap records set that will last for years to come. Even Williams appears to have taken a sizable step forward. George Russell said he could push the car immediately this year, whereas last year's troubled FW42 was scary to drive. The challenge for the team at the back is to make more progress than those it was so far behind in 2019. That's everything you need to know so far about F1 testing in 2020. Make sure to leave us your thoughts in the comments below and check out therace.com for more updates from Barcelona as Test 2 gets underway.